Bienvenue à la réunion numéro 4.
Welcome to meeting number 91 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics.
Chambre de commune. Conformément à l'article.
Pursuant to Standing Order 108.3H and the motion adopted by the committee on Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, the committee is commencing its study of allegations related to governance and management of contributions by Sustainable Development Canada.
Place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to the standing orders, members are attending in person in the room and remotely. We don't have any members remotely on the Zoom application. Just a couple of important reminders. I'd like to remind all members and witnesses that care must be taken with regard to the earpieces for interpretation. Please be mindful to not place your earpiece near the microphone, as this can result in a feedback loop which may cause an acoustic shock, which could in turn cause injury to the interpreters. Before we begin with Mr. McConaughey, Monsieur Villemure, vous avez quelque chose à dire?
You had something to say, Mr. Villemure? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say something at the start of the committee meeting. We are here to debate on ideas, but we need to make sure that this debate doesn't turn into a battle. And I would like to invite us all to avoid personal attacks, because this does not move the goal of our committee forward. Thank you, Mr. Villemure.
I'd like to now welcome our witnesses today from the Department of Industry. I've got Mr. Douglas McConaughey, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, Corporate Management Sector. Welcome, Mr. McConaughey. From Sustainable Development Technology Canada, Leah Lawrence, President and Chief Executive Officer, Annette Versturen, Chair, Board of Directors, Cheryl Uri, Vice President of Finance. Did I say that correct? Uri? Okay, thank you. Mr. McConaughey, you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Please go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, honourable members, officials, my name is Douglas McConaughey. I'm the CFO and the Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Management at ISED. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to contextualize the remarks that were attributed to me in recent media reports related to Sustainable Development Technology Canada, or STDC. Mr. Chair, the allegations that were made against STDC are very serious. However, it is important to note that the confidential file that was prepared by the complainant did not contain clear evidence of wrongdoing or misconduct, in spite of its impressive size. Due process demanded that we address the complaint expeditiously and in confidence, both to protect the complainant from reprisal and to ensure that the reputations of the STDT board and executive were not unfairly besmirched. ISED decided to undertake a fact-finding exercise to determine if the allegations had merit and whether there is a factual basis upon which to take further action. Between March 17 and September 29, I met with the complainant 24 times, representing more than 30 hours of conversation. My objective in these meetings was to be as transparent as possible about how ISED was managing the complaint and to provide timely updates on the status of the fact-finding exercise. I wanted the complainant to understand that ISED was taking the complaint seriously and to build his confidence in the integrity of the process. I also wanted the complainant to have trust in my neutrality, since none of the allegations implicated me as an individual. By the midpoint of the exercise, it became apparent that the complainant either did not understand or did not agree with the methodology and approach being used by Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton, RCGT. He was not satisfied to allow RCGT to independently validate his allegations on the basis of objective facts. The complainant stated his opinion that RCGT was overly reliant upon documentation provided by STDC, and he requested follow-up interviews to walk through documentation that he possessed. Since the provenance of this information could not be authenticated, RCGT rightly pushed back against these requests. As the preliminary findings started to come in, I advised the complainant that facts had been found to support some of the allegations. These included inconsistencies and opportunities for improvement in the application of general governance and conflict of interest practices, compliance with the contribution agreement, and certain human resources practices. Mr. Chair, I was surprised and disappointed to uncover these types of issues in a mature organization with a highly experienced board and executive. In my opinion, these issues do not meet the standards of the public service. However, none of these issues rose to the standard of wrongdoing or misconduct, and they did not support taking formal action against individuals. The complainant was visibly upset that the facts were not aligning with the narrative of his complaint. He repeatedly stated that it would be a great injustice if the STDC board and executive were allowed to continue to serve in their roles, and they could not be trusted to remediate the issues that have been identified. During our meetings in August and September, the complainant repeatedly pressured me for details of any findings that would implicate the STDC board and executive. I was hammered with questions on what actions the government might take to replace or dismiss individuals. I was asked over and over to speculate on the different ways in which the government might take action. In retrospect, I should have ended my meetings with the complainant at this point, but I still thought that I could de-escalate the situation. In order to mollify the complainant, I speculated that the results of the fact-finding exercise could give rise to an expanded investigation by ISED, the Auditor General, or other third parties. I speculated that the government might question their confidence in the board and whether it was tenable for them to continue to serve. I further speculated that the government might decide to reorganize or wind down STDC, and that this could have an undesirable impact on employees and stakeholders. At the same time, I made it very clear to the complainant that these decisions are exclusively within the purview of government, and that I would almost certainly not be involved in, nor asked to advise on any process requiring decisions by the Governor and Council. Since it has come to light that our conversations were recorded without my knowledge, I can see that I was baited into making these speculative and inappropriate remarks. Recent media reports have selectively excerpted and sequenced a few minutes from over 30 hours of conversation in order to advance the false narrative that there is a consensus within ISED that the STDC board and executive should be terminated. However, the timeline clearly illustrates that my comments were made before the RCGT report was received and also well before I briefed the Deputy Minister and other officials. The media reports also suggest that the Minister's response to the findings was not aligned with my advice. This is simply not the case. Mr. Chair, it is important to note that I directly oversaw the engagement with RCGT until its conclusion. I authored the Management Response and Action Plan to redress the issues that were identified in the report, and I drafted the briefing note in collaboration with other ISED officials to generate advice for the Minister. I stand by this advice, and I feel strongly that the Minister's response was justified and proportionate. In summary, I was extremely naive to expect that my good faith conversations with the complainant would remain private. I never expected my remarks to be used out of context to reinforce a narrative that is not supported by independently verified facts. I was too transparent, too trusting, and I deeply regret any impact that this has had on the government, STDC, and ISED. Mr. Chair, I'd be pleased to take your questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McConaughey. I understand that there's shared time between SDTC members. Are you going to start, Ms. Lauren, or Ms. Virtue? Please go ahead. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members. I'm proud of my track record leading major transformational companies that create jobs and opportunities for Canadians. I am particularly proud of my role as chair of STTC, joined by my two strong female leaders. STT provides funding to Canadian entrepreneurs developing and deploying innovative, sustainable technologies. We have 229 companies in our portfolio today, representing every province in our country. StatsCan data shows our companies regularly outperform other small and medium-sized businesses. Every dollar SDTC invested since 2001 has resulted in more than $7 in follow-on financing from the public and private sector, 7 to 1. The allegations made by this small group of former employees are false, and we are here today to set the record straight. I have the privilege of sitting on the board with 14 other senior private sector leaders who have deep expertise on governance, operations, and delivering real results. On behalf of the board, let me tell you that this is one of the best-run organizations that we have ever been part of. The former employees raised their concerns with us earlier this year before the ISED fact-finding exercise even started. We took it very seriously. We convened a special committee and hired a top law firm, Osler, to do a thorough investigation to get to the bottom of it. No evidence was found to support the allegations. Let's compare this to the RCGT process. Whereas Osler conducted 23 hours of interviews, board director interviews with RCGT were as short as 15 minutes. What's more, important documentation that was provided to RCGT was not reflected in the report. The result is a report which contains numerous errors and misrepresentations of our policies and procedures. We tried to raise these issues with both RCGT consultant and CFO at the time. We have since shared the full list of mistakes with the department and have now tabled it with this committee. I will now turn over to STTC's CEO, Leah Lawrence.
Thank you, Ms. Verschuren, and thank you for the opportunity to shed some light today on the facts at hand. I was hired by the Board of Directors in June 2015 with a mandate to change. I was asked to modernize SDTC to meet the accelerating pace of innovation in Canada and globally. I was asked to make funding processes and procedures more company and client sector focused. I was asked to reduce operating expenses to ensure a more nimble, effective, and efficient use of public funds. Therefore, I built a leadership team that started transforming the organization. We zeroed in on small and medium-sized companies. We struck deep relationships with major public and Crown funders across the entire country. We worked with them to reduce barriers for entrepreneurs to access the support they need to succeed. We brought in new talent and skills, people with deep experience in entrepreneurship, innovation, finance, and market adoption. In March of 2023, ISED's evaluation branch completed a 5-year review of STTC. That report, which has not yet been released, made these observations. It commended our diversity of funding streams and flexibility. It recognized our trailblazing streams of funding from seed to startup to scale-up. It commended our low overhead, down substantially and far below comparable federal bodies. Let me give you an example. It used to take 12 to 18 months for an entrepreneur to go through our processes, and now, with increased rigor, it takes 4 to 6 months. Our operating expenses went from being 20% over budget to being under budget. We successfully created a performance-driven culture made up of professionals who are great at what they do. We are now the biggest funder of Canadian cleantech businesses, bringing made-in-Canada innovation to market. Because Canada can and should be a market leader in the green economy, with SDTC-supported companies like Hi-Fi, Ever, and Saltworks leading the way. I want to thank my leaders and every member of the SDTC team for their steadfast professionalism and dedication. Our organization has played by the rules, improved the rules, and achieved results for Canadians. My leaders have acted ethically at all times. I stand behind our track record. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the companies we've helped to succeed. I very much welcome your questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lawrence and Ms. Verschuren. We're going to start with our first 6-minute rounds. We're going to go to Mr. Barrett. Just to save some time, I know in previous committee hearings you probably went through the chair. I kind of like that direct action responding between member and the witness. So, Mr. Barrett, you have 6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Mr. McConaughey, when did you learn about the whistleblower complaints? On what date?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I believe that, I'll give you the exact date, on February 16th, it was ISED had received the confidential file from PCO.
When did you learn of the RCGT report findings?
Mr. Chair, the first working draft of the document we had requested was delivered on September 8th. And that was a hastened version that hadn't been through their quality control process because we were having internal discussions about the matter.
When was the RCGT report commissioned?
The contract was issued on March 17th.
And you hadn't seen an initial draft in May?
In May, we received an interim brief from RCGT with a draft report that frankly was not acceptable to us. It had language that was not helpful, and it was as a result of that we decided to dig deeper and conduct additional procedures.
A bit different than September, but thank you for the precision. When was the minister made aware of the RCGT findings? I do not have the date that the deputy minister communicated with the minister, but I do know that the briefing note was signed by the deputy minister on September 26th. I'm sorry, September 27th. So the deputy minister was going to brief the minister on findings imminently on June 7th. Did that happen or no?
I don't have any awareness of that.
There's a quote. So I'm going to offer a series of quotes. They're from you.
Certainly.
So this one in context is, quote, "The deputy is lining up a discussion with the minister imminently to take the pulse." That was June 7th. So that didn't happen?
I don't know if it did or not. It's possible that that was an action that was being proposed at the time, but I can't speak for the deputy or the minister.
I have a quote from you. It says, "It's unlikely that certain members of the board or the entire board and executives are going to be able to continue to serve, like they've kind of lost the confidence. So really, the discussion will be the mechanisms for getting them out." Close quote. Then you said, quote, "The minister is going to flip out when he hears the stuff, and he's going to want an extreme reaction, like shut it all down." Close quote. What changed the minister's mind and gave him confidence in the board?
Well, those remarks were made in the August, early September timeframe, well before the minister had ever been briefed. As I indicated in my opening remarks, it was speculation on my part. It was inappropriate. I regret the remarks. But I do think on the notion of the minister flipping out, it is normal for any senior official to, or minister for that matter, to react strongly when we've had some findings of, through the exercise.
So I just want to take a step back for the timeline again. You said the minister was going to be briefed on June the 7th, and then...
I did not say that, sir.
"The deputy is lining up a discussion with the minister imminently to take the pulse." You did say it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if it happened, though, sir.
Okay. So this is the challenge. So if we just stick to what actually happened versus what we would have preferred to have had happened, then that will match up with the recordings that we have, and then we can get to the bottom of this. Did the minister see or get a readout on the Osler report?
I don't know if he did or not, sir.
Did you?
Yes, we were provided a debrief a verbal debrief by the STDC.
Was it a whitewash?
I don't know.
Okay. You said it was. You referred to it as the, quote, Osler whitewash investigation. You went on to say, quote, "They could have done it in a way that exonerated the board and scapegoated Leah," end quote. I expect you were referring to Ms. Lawrence to your left. To your right, my left. Was it the RCGT report that gave him confidence in the board that they need not be fired? Because it found that there was $48 million in suspected wrongdoing. The minister referred to this at committee as a forensic audit. It was, of course, not that. It was a fact-finding exercise, and this is why Canada's Auditor General has launched an investigation. It also found wrongdoing in a sample of only 21 projects, and it said the conflict of interest rules were not followed. Is this what gave confidence to the minister, that readout?
I'm sorry, which readout are you referring to?
Well, the RCGT report that detailed the wrongdoing and failure to follow the conflict of interest regime.
Well, Mr. Chair, our interpretation of the RCGT report is that the findings that were made do not constitute wrongdoing or misconduct.
Okay.
We had significant discussions internally as to whether or not even these issues would constitute a breach of the contribution agreement.
Well,
and frankly, it didn't even rise to that standard.
Well, it rose to the standard to get Canada's Auditor General's attention. You said it was going to be shut down and everyone would be fired, but instead, nothing was shut down and nobody was fired. As soon as it became a political problem, the tone changed very dramatically, and the minister isn't firing anyone. And then we saw that a foundation that shares the name of the chair of the board was receiving funding from the government and praise from the minister. So I'm very curious in what changed the direction, and I have one question for you. Do you believe the whistleblowers?
Quick response.
Mr. Chair, those remarks that were made were speculative in nature. I believe a portion of what the whistleblowers have alleged based on the facts that have been identified in the RCGT report, and I believe that nothing was found to date that would be construed as misconduct or wrongdoing. There may be further findings in the Auditor General's examination, but I'm not privy to that.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Barrett. Madame Fortier, pour 6 minutes. Commencez, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. Before I ask my questions, I do want to say that I'm a bit disappointed that I wasn't able to ask questions right after the minister on Monday. It would have been good to see what the minister said and right away have the conversation with you, but this is where we are today. So I'm going to quote the minister just so we're in the same space. And the minister did mention that he works on the basis of evidence. I'm a lawyer. I would certainly caution members of this committee to apply due process when they're looking at allegations. That's why the moment I was made aware of allegations, we had a third party come to do a full investigation and report back to me. Another one, he said, let's be clear, our government will always hold all organizations that receive public funds to the highest standards. He also said it is integral that due process and due diligence continue to guide these next steps. And finally, one more, I also remain fully committed to exploring the complainant's allegations. So just a refresher of what the minister had said. So I would like to ask the SDTC some questions. I'm not sure which one will answer, but feel free to answer. When did SDTC become aware of the alleged allegations raised by the whistleblowers? What was your organization's initial plan and reaction to address this?
Yes, thank you, Honourable Member. I'll start and I'll ask Ms. Yuri to add to the discussion. So the SDTC became aware of the allegations on or around January 27th when a whistleblower approached a director of SDTC and raised concerns with that director. Immediately, it is my understanding, I was not involved in this, but immediately, as my understanding, the governance committee met and struck a special committee to do an independent investigation, as is our processes and as our approach. That independent group hired a national law firm, Osler, to look into those allegations. And they spent over 35 hours and looked at tens of thousands of documents using artificial intelligence and keyword searches to go through the allegations that had been made to the director. Of course, we have that with you in the findings in the package that we distributed to committee. And of course, you will have seen that Osler found that the allegations, as did our CGT, find that the allegations were not substantiated.
Can you highlight the official ethics guidelines that your organization is expected to follow? And can you explain the processes and mechanisms in place that ensure these guidelines are properly followed by all of the board and employees? Please.
Ask Ms. Yuri, please, to address that. You can just go. They turn it on.
Good. Thank you for the question. So our board of directors are subject to a number of policies as it relates to conflict of interest and code of ethics. In particular, conflicts of interest as it relates to projects is very important. And so throughout our process, how SDTC manages this as a board member receives information from us, there's many conflicts that are checked in advance. It starts with a conflicts of interest registry that is maintained, which records all previous conflicts that may have been declared by board members. And in advance of the distribution of any information to the board members, there's 3 weeks in advance, we send out an email to board members which summarizes the information related to the project, which includes the company that is applying for a project, project partners that are included, as well as expert reviewers. That information is shared with the board members. The board members have to respond within a week with any conflicts that they need to declare, or else respond that there's no conflict. When that information is received by SDTC, we take that information and we consolidate our project packages as we submit information to individual board members to ensure any board member that has a conflict of interest has no access to information related to projects for which they may have a conflict. When it comes to discussions at our project review committee, All of the conflicts that have been declared are identified and discussed at the beginning of the committee. There may be a discussion around those conflicts, but they're noted in the minutes. And as the meeting moves forward, if there is a particular committee member or board member that may have declared a conflict related to that project, they're recused from the meeting, and so they'll be moved to a virtual Zoom room as required, since we do a lot of these things that way. And then they will rejoin the meeting after the project has been discussed and after a project has been voted on. And I think one of the inconsistencies in our documentation is we neglected to note that the individual committee member was left the meeting room and then returned to the meeting room. This again happens at the board level when there's discussions related to projects at the board level. The same activities are followed, and that individuals that have a conflict with a project are recused from any of the discussions and also for voting on any particular project at the board level.
Am I done already?
You've got 8 seconds if you...
No, thank you. I'll come back later. Thanks.
All right, we'll have lots of times for questions today. Monsieur Villemur, commencez, 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Go ahead. You have 6 minutes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for being with us today. Thank you for allowing us to better understand. I have 2 questions, Mr. McConaughey. The committee asked to receive the Raymond Chabot report in an unredacted format, and we received a redacted format. We didn't receive any justifications, and yesterday we received another version of it. Why the hesitation?
Chair, the ETHI obligations for the department require us to protect third-party information, whether that be from the complainants, from those who the allegations are against, and also the ultimate recipients who, frankly, have not done anything wrong in this case. So we had actually consulted STDC on the final draft of the report to ensure that they were in agreement with the proposed redactions, and that is what I believe the committee has received, although I'm not aware of the more recent versions that you've referred to.
Juste pour faire l'information.
Just for information's sake, the third version allows us to better understand while preserving the confidentiality and the privacy of third parties. But I was wondering why that wasn't what we received the first time, because we lost precious time. And I can understand why a document needs to be redacted, but with the first version, we couldn't follow anything.
In the submission of these most recent versions, I believe our parliamentary affairs team coordinated that, so I'm sorry I can't answer the question.
D'accord, sans problème. Prenez note, ça peut être utile.
Perfect. Okay. Perhaps you can take notes for the next time. I'll move on now to Ms. Yuri. You talked about your policy on conflict of interest. And you talked about it very clearly. Do you believe that there is an interest that exists that isn't actually a conflict of interest?
I can explain to you some of the different types of conflicts of interest that are identified that may not be actually a conflict of interest. For instance, we may have a board member that is perhaps a president, CEO of a company, and they have a vendor that provides regular sewer maintenance services for their organization. And so a vendor that's providing regular sewer maintenance services for that organization as a regular course of business that may be identified also as a project partner for one of our proponents that's maybe developing an innovative technology for sewer management systems, that may be kind of identified as a potential conflict, but there's no I think, monetary aspect that the partner that's participating in the project is necessarily receiving from being part of another company in their regular course of business.
Si je comprends bien.
And if I understood correctly, interests exist, correct? Perfect. And there are some interests that can be a conflict of interest, and some of the conflicts of interest don't lead to any damage. The distinction is important because oftentimes people think of interests and automatically think of conflict of interest. When you look at conflict of interest, do you look at the accountability of the person who could be potentially having a conflict of interest?
It's very important to understand the position that the individual holds within the entity that maybe have the perceived conflict of interest, because the ability for anyone to influence actions or to influence decision-making for sure would have an impact on whether there would be a conflict of interest. I would say that some of the discussions related to conflict of interest are discussed more deeply at the board to ensure that everyone is in agreement on whether it is a real conflict, a potential conflict, or a perceived conflict. We've taken actions more recently to engage an ethics advisor to ensure that the board has the support that they need for those types of discussions as they move forward.
Est-ce que le consultant en éthique est nécessairement un avocat?
Is that person a lawyer?
The ethics advisor is a lawyer.
OK. Monsieur McConaughey, je reviens à vous.
Mr. McConaughey, coming back to you, I asked a question to the minister the other day, and he said that it would be in your wheelhouse. And it's not necessarily about SDTC, but the government seems to subcontract a lot of its administrative responsibilities with the We Charity and ArriveCan, where a department has an agreement with an organization, and by subcontracting the responsibilities, they can be sheltered from accountability that one would expect from a department. Who decides when to move forward with a subcontractor?
In the case of STDC, the organization was created by statute in 2001, so it was a decision of Parliament.
C'est pas le meilleur exemple, en effet, mais d'autres projets au...
That's not a great example, I guess, because there are agreements with groups that aren't under this legislation. So why? And I don't want to go back to We Charity, but I want to talk about the dynamic here. Why does it exist?
Role, and not pertinent to this case at all. Third parties are often used because they have greater proximity to the target market, or whoever the recipients are in the end. They may have specialized knowledge and expertise that doesn't exist in government. And they may have relationships within those ecosystems that we don't have as well. So frankly, there are a number of situations where grant and contribution programs are better delivered by someone that is closer to the...
empêche quand même la transparence et l'imputabilité ministérielle.
But it allows for departments to not have accountability.
Contribution agreements have numerous reporting provisions in them and governance provisions as well that allow for public servants to be observers on the board, that allow for annual reporting requirements, and other methodologies for managing the contribution agreements.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. McConaughey. Merci, Monsieur Villemure.
Thank you, Mr. Villemure.
Minutes, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, and it's good to be back at committee. It's been quite some time. I'm a little bit out of practice. I'm going to put a series of questions to you all in a very direct way. Please know that it's not personal. Please know that if I ask to reclaim my time to move on to the next question, I'm not doing that to be rude, but our time is limited. We've had some preliminary testimony here today about the natures of conflict of interest. I think that's at the heart of some of the allegations that have been made, quite frankly, and I'd rather not talk about them hypothetically. I'd rather talk about them directly. So I'll put my questions through you, Madam Chair. As the chair of the board, how would you define a conflict of interest?
Conflict of interest is a situation where there is, an interest, an influence in terms of a direct conflict.
And so that would include kind of beneficiary, fiduciary benefits to it, or other types of benefits to decisions that are made. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
That's correct. Have you added, so I'll begin, and again, I'm going to put these questions directly to you rather than hypothetically. Are you currently the CEO of North Star?
EnerStore, yes, I am the
EnerStore?
chair and CEO of EnerStore, yes.
And is EnerStore currently on the conflict of interest registry?
Yes, it is.
And are you listed as one of the beneficial owners of that?
Yes, I am.
And were you, at any time, was your company in receipt of funding from the fund that you also chair?
I want to make one thing very clear, Honourable Member. Contrary to erroneous reports and allegations, no project that I have an interest in has applied for funding while I've been chair of STTC.
Was it before?
It was 18 months before.
Had it received the funding prior to?
It had, in 18 months before my appointment as chair, Interstore was funded for a project, yes.
And were there any potential votes that would have been dealing with your organization? Did they come to the board, and if so, did you?
At the time, obviously, when I was asked to be chair, I disclosed my role as CEO of Interstore to the government, to the vetting process.
Sorry, I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to put it directly, and I'm going to ask you to answer it.
minister,
Excuse me, I
disclosed
do
it.
have the floor. Did you, at any time that you were on the board, vote on any motions that would have involved your organization, Interstore?
No,
Okay. So you never had to recuse yourself from any decisions, funding, ongoing renewals of contracts, or anything of that nature?
no.
Okay. That suffices. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to describe the part? You're okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good. I just wanted to put that out there because, again, allegations are made. It's important that we just directly ask the questions, that we're not using hypothetical situations, and you have the opportunity to reply in the public forum.
Can I add something to that answer?
Unfortunately, not at this moment. Do you accept the findings of the RCGT report?
I think there's a lot of errors in the RCGT report, and I'm going to ask Leah to.
Can you
Ms. Lawrence to-
provide those in writing? That
Yes,
would be
we-
more
and we
beneficial for
have.
my testimony.
So in the, yes, I don't have to go through the chair, pardon me. That was provided in your background.
Yeah.
The staff.
There's a pretty big discrepancy there.
Yeah, the team put together the list and we provided them, in particular related to certain reviews related to conflict of interest as well as other items.
Okay. Mr. McConaughey, is that correct? Thank you. How long was the initial fact-finding exercise process supposed to take place?
The first phase of it was contracted for approximately 8 weeks, about half of that being field work.
Okay. And forgive me if you've already testified on this. Did the RCGT and ISED sit down with the whistleblower and review the allegations?
Yes. I'm sorry, can you reframe the question? I'm not sure I quite understood.
Did you sit down with the whistleblowers, with ISED, and review the allegations?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I reviewed the extensive binder that the complainant had created, and then as I mentioned in my opening statement, had almost weekly meetings with him throughout the process.
And so you asked the whistleblowers for documents in July?
No, the documents were provided to ISED in February.
In February?
Yes.
Is ISED now continuing to ask for the documents?
I'm sorry, maybe I'm not understanding. What documents are you referring to?
From the whistleblower.
The whistleblower, ISED's involvement in this exercise came about when PCO had referred the whistleblower's documentation to us. It was a very large, approximately 345-page binder that we had received on February 16th. And after internally reviewing that material, the decision was made to launch a fact-finding exercise.
Did you speak to the deputies, the PCO, or the minister directly or indirectly between March and September?
I did not, no.
Not at all?
Not at all. Well, to the deputy minister, yes, of course. I report to the deputy minister, but I've had no engagement with the minister or his exempt staff.
What was the ISED RCGT report or PCO opinion of the Osler investigation that you said was a whitewash?
We had minimal discussions. I certainly never discussed it with in any degree of detail with PCO, but we had received the debrief from the STDC committee that had.
So what was the nature of your discussions then with ISED or RCGT?
Frankly, there was, ISED was not involved in the Osler review. We didn't have visibility into the methodology or any real details on the
Last question.
findings.
Are your reports back and forth verbal on the phone or are they
Very
via
quick
email?
answer.
We had a Teams meeting where we were debriefed verbally by the lawyers who conducted the review at Osler.
Were the notes summarized?
Thank you, Mr. Green.
No?
Mr.
You had
McConaughey,
meetings but
thank you.
didn't summarize the notes
Ms.
and everything?
Verscheeren, I know you wanted to, we've completed our first round here. I know that there was something that you wanted to add. I'm going to give you the opportunity in a minute or less to add what you wanted to add to Mr. Green.
Yes, I wanted to, on the the declaration of the project that I worked on, that Enerstor represented, it was 18 months before. I proactively disclosed my role as CEO of Enerstor to the government during the vetting, to the minister, to the department, and to SDTC. I also went to the ethics commissioner because I wanted to be clear that this was something that I would be comfortable, that it would be comfortable for me to do this. And I spent 2 hours with the ethics commissioner. And I think that's really, so I want to be 100% clear, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
that-
I know you wanted to say something,
Thank
so I wanted to give you that opportunity. Thank you. We're going to start with our second round now. We're going to go to Mr. Cooper for 5 minutes. Mr. Cooper, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Vishurin, Ms. Yuri indicated that when the whistleblower submission was made, and that was in January, that it was immediately referred to the governance committee of the board. Do you serve on the governance committee?
I'll tell you, I got a call, I think, on February 3rd.
I'm just asking a very simple question. Are you a member of the governance committee?
I'm a member of the governance committee, but I was certainly not involved in any discussion on this issue with the governance committee.
Did you? So you recused yourself?
I was asked not to attend. Okay, and the special committee was struck.
And Ms. Lawrence, were you involved in any discussions with the governance committee with respect to the whistleblower complaint?
I was not.
Okay, Ms. Vishurin, through you, Mr. Chair, you indicated that there was one allotment of funding from SDTC to an interest that you had, and you had indicated that you went through to the ethics commissioner, you alerted the minister, and so on. There are follow-up reviews of investments, are there not?
There is, I think Ms. Yuri can explain this, how it works.
Sure. Projects undergo ongoing monitoring throughout the term of the project. It's often the projects that are funded by our program last from anywhere to 3 to 5 years, and the projects are monitored on a milestone basis. We have regular check-ins with the companies, and there's required reporting on a regular basis as they work through their work.
And those follow-up reviews would be undertaken by the board, would they?
As the project goes through the regular monitoring process, no, the board does not undertake those reviews. Those reviews are undertaken by SDTC staff.
So, Ms. Vishurin, you had no involvement whatsoever in the follow-up reviews?
Not.
Okay. Thank you for that. You are the CEO of Enerstar, is that correct?
Enerstor.
Enerstores, I apologize. And you had indicated that Enerstor did not receive funding from SDTC since you have been appointed chair. Is that correct?
Are you referring to the COVID
I'll be specific. That company, Enerstor, received $106,000 in so-called COVID relief payments in 2020 and another $111,000 the following year in 2021. So that is inconsistent with what you had previously stated. Your company, in which you were the CEO and are the CEO of, received almost $220,000 from SDTC, approved by the board.
Honourable member, at the time of the board decision on those COVID payments, you recall it's March 2020. It was very difficult. We were very afraid that we were going to lose the investments that we made and the jobs.
Ms. Vishurin,
so the board sought
Ms. Vishurin, I just asked you to confirm that money went out the door, nearly $220,000 to your company in 2020 and 21. $220,000, correct?
The board sought legal advice on how best to proceed during the COVID payments.
And you moved the motion to funnel that money out the door, didn't you?
Because funding went to existing portfolio companies where conflicts were previously declared, so they were declared, and because no company received preferential treatment, The legal opinion
No money
was
received preferential treatment. Your company received preferential treatment in the sense that you sat on the board and provided money to it that the RGCT report flagged as likely not complying with the contribution agreement.
legal opinion
From who?
was then received with no conflicts needed
Who
to be
provided
cleared.
the legal opinion?
Osler's.
Osler. And was Mr. Van Veen involved in providing bad advice? Vandenberg, rather?
Yes.
He was.
Yes.
And he's he serves as on the council, does he not?
He's a member.
He's a member of the council.
Yeah, not on the board of directors.
And he was involved in providing that advice.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Incredible.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. We have, thank you as well, Ms. Verschuren. We have Ms. Damoff for 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair. I would just echo what Mr. Villemure said earlier. If we can try to be respectful to people who've taken the time to come before the committee. I'm curious, and I don't know which one of you three ladies would answer, but we got in our package a letter that was sent to Mr. Broussard that included your memo with factual inaccuracies. When was that sent? I just got it, I think last night or this morning. It makes it really hard to review all this information when it comes last minute.
I believe it was distributed to the committee last Friday because of course we thought we were going to have to be here to be witnesses on Monday.
Okay. So one of those things that I got last minute was the Osler report. In that it talks about the project approval process, that Osler observed a robust conflict declaration process and awareness of employees, both executive and lower level, of the importance of avoiding actual or perceived conflicts, and that each project went through at least 38 people, and their conclusion was it appears to be very difficult for a single individual to influence whether a report receives SDTC funding. Would you say that that's accurate?
That is accurate. I would say that SDTC is known for a very rigorous due diligence process. It's very important for the team to understand the project, the innovation that's being proposed by a potential applicant. So I can talk to you a little bit about the process. We receive applications, which then reviewed at a first level on whether really the proposal meets the mandate of SDTC. From there, it will get funneled through, and then we look at the criteria and whether it actually meets the criteria of the SDTC program. Which
I'm actually going to stop you because I don't have a lot of time, and I see most of that is outlined in the Osler's report. So we'll just refer people that want to read it to that. Ms. Lawrence, I have a question about the ethics advisor. In an October 15th memo to the board, you note a third-party governance review recommendation from 2022 that SDTC hire an independent ethics advisor, and you started the hiring process in September 2022. Is that correct?
That's correct. We went through an executive search process, which is, as people would know, can take a number of months to find good candidates. The individual started about a month ago.
Okay, so that's a year, though. So did it take a year in order to, if it was such an important position, why did it take so long to get someone in place?
It was approved in the fall, as you read. We engaged, and then Christmas and the summer happened, so unfortunately it did take longer than we expected.
There was also spring in there, though.
Yeah.
Mr. McConaughey, thank you for being here. When the minister was here, he talked about the fact-finding, quoting, the fact-finding report found no clear evidence of willful misconduct, but did identify a number of instances in which STDC was not in full compliance with its contribution agreement. Would you be able to define willful misconduct and how it's different than inconsistencies and opportunities for improvement?
Mr. Chair, I'm not a lawyer. I'm an accountant. I'm a CFO, so it's not my area of expertise. But my layperson's understanding is that willful misconduct would be considered founded wrongdoing. And there was nothing in the RCGD findings to suggest that there was a willful intent.
So within your role within the department, did you engage lawyers to determine whether this rose to the level of willful misconduct?
Yes.
Minister, you did?
Yes,
And they determined that it was not?
that's correct.
Okay. So, sorry to put you on the spot. The question should have been, did the lawyers determine that? I'm also wondering, the minister brought up a number of times due process. What is the danger of making assumptions from a fact-finding report?
Well, the fact-finding report has a very limited scope and very limited methodology, and it was being directed by judgmental samples from the complainant's report. So it's certainly not exhaustive. It's not a detailed forensic audit. And all we received really was indications that some of the allegations may have merit. And the intent, as I indicated, was always to determine whether next steps would be required. But that is hardly sufficient grounds to terminate an individual, to take stronger measures. And again, this is why I feel the minister's responded appropriately in this regard.
Good. Thank you, Mr. McConaughey. Thank you, Ms. Damoff. Monsieur Villemure, 2 minutes et demi, s'il vous plaît.
Merci.
2.5 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Lawrence, I would like to know, when you hire an ethics advisor who is a lawyer, we look at compliance. And compliance is the lowest form of ethics. So that's the floor there. But what could bring you to do more? Because being compliant is not the greatest achievement either. So why not aim higher?
Absolutely, honorable member. Thank you for the question. That is exactly what the ethics advisor's scope is. It's much broader than the minimum. What the ethics advisor is there for is to be available. As you stated earlier, honorable member, the direct conflicts actually are straightforward. They're under the Code of Ethics. They can be adjudicated appropriately, and we're very proactive in that regard. The more challenging things can be where you need to think about perceived conflict or potential, and how are those administrated, and what do you need to do. And that is exactly what we're talking about. So the ethics advisor has already been advising on upgrades to our Code of Ethics in that regard. He's also already been advising on the register that we can put in place to help people understand and be transparent. As you can imagine, we have a number of streams of people that work with our organization. We have our board of directors, of course. We have employees. We also have consultants, and we have others.
I only have 2.5 minutes, so I'm going to have to interrupt here. I would like for you to talk about best practices that were brought forward by the ethics advisor since his arrival, or their arrival.
Yes, well, in particular, he has talked about how we can move any concerns or complaints through our processes and procedures to him directly. For example, up until today, if there was a complaint against an individual, it had gone to an individual other than myself. It went to the HR vice president. Now what's going to happen is any complaint, regardless where it comes from, it will go to the ethics advisor or who it may be against. The second thing that they're looking at is, right now I think it's usually a phone call, anonymous phone line that people can use. But now he's saying there's other ways, email, other appropriate measures, because some people would like different avenues to raise their concerns.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur Villemure. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Villemure. Mr. Green.
Ms. Verschuren, I have a problem with the discrepancies between the questions that I asked you and the answers you gave Mr. Cooper. I asked you if in your official capacity you acted in a way that would have furthered the interest of your organization. You said that happened 18 months prior, and yet the conversation around the COVID funding happened in 2020 and 2021. Under your own board governance definitions of a conflict of interest, it arises when a person exercises an official power, duty, or function that provides an opportunity to further their own private interests. Would you not agree that over $200,000 of COVID funding furthers your own private interest?
The board considered the
I asked you a very direct question. I need a very direct answer. For you, do you not consider that by moving a motion to provide $200,000 worth of funding to an organization that you were the CEO of does not constitute, at the very least, a perceived conflict of interest, if not a very real one?
The COVID payments were made as a portfolio of companies. They were made, all the conflicts were assumed previously declared.
Did you receive an ethics commissioner approval for this? You did it when you came to the board.
Yes.
But I didn't hear you say that you did that on this particular vote. Why not?
Again, we took the position that these COVID payments were broad. It was an operational issue.
The lawyer who is also a member of your council took that position. Could you not appreciate why that the perception to the public, the taxpayers who are watching this, hearing the discrepancies in that line of reasoning, would see that as a problem?
You know, the minutes of March 20th board meeting demonstrated and showed this.
Did you
and,
recuse yourself from that vote on the COVID funding, or did you move the motion?
I believe I moved the motion.
You didn't recuse yourself.
It wasn't.
Do you
a decision
regret the
that
decision not to recuse yourself from that decision?
I took the advice from my lawyer.
The lawyer who's a member of the council of the organization that you belong to?
I took the advice from Osler.
Why no ethics commissioner? That would have cleared you right here today. But right now, I got to tell you, somebody came into this fairly objective. This raises more questions than it does answer. I put very specific questions to you. You made it appear as though you did not act in the interest of your organization after you joined the board. That we now know to not be true.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you. Okay, before we begin with Mr. Brock, I just need clarification from Ms. Damoff. Ms. Damoff, you said that you received documents last evening. Which documents were you referring to?
The Osler report?
Yeah, we received that at 8:18 last night, I believe.
Okay.
So you would have received that, but you made reference to a letter that came from SDTC officials.
I thought it was included with the Osler report. Was
that
included
came in
with
at
that, Chair?
3:47 on Friday and was distributed at 5:15 on Friday.
That was my error. I
Yeah,
just find even getting the Osler report so late, it makes it really hard for us before a committee. It's not
We
directed
received
at
it
you,
last
Chair.
night at
No,
8:18.
I'm not directing that at you.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Brock.
Actually, Chair, on that particular point, was that Osler report shared with the Conservative team? 'Cause I haven't seen it.
Okay, it should have been.
It was distributed to everybody.
Yeah, it would have been in the committee's digital binder. I mean, I have a copy of it as well, Mr. Brock, so
Okay.
it probably was distributed into the committee's binder and sent by email to everyone yeah, it was distributed to all members. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Brock, go ahead. You have 5.
Mr. Gourde.
Monsieur Gould, pour 5 minutes. Allez-y.
You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. My question has to do with a fund by SDTC. And there are no requirements for a report. Is that true?
Translation, no requirements for reporting, is that the question?
Le fonds d'amorçage.
The seed funding doesn't require a report. Is that true?
No, it's not true. Ms. Yuri can provide further information for you.
So our seed funding stream is similar to the other streams of funding that we provide, and they're subject to the same terms and conditions as required in our contribution agreement. So the seed funding stream is required to report at the end of their project on the project results, as well as the eligible costs that were incurred and the funding received to complete the project.
Merci. Le fonds prévoit.
Thank you. And that's from 50 to 500,000 given to a seed fund, and that went from 2019 to 2022. 180 projects were funded for a total of $17 million, an average of $97,000. So all who applied received the maximum of $100,000, correct?
No, all who applied did not receive the maximum of 100,000. There's varying amounts, but generally most projects that come in will be eligible for $100,000. That's the maximum contribution that's available in the seed funding stream.
180 projects were funded. Would you be able to repeat that question, please?
Que vous pouvez donner au comité, peut-être pas aujourd'hui.
Perhaps not today. Can you come back with the number of projects, the seeding projects? Because we have the number of projects that were approved, but how many people participated? If we could have that list of the 180 projects and companies that received funding.
Sure. Our funding is available publicly on our website, so it's available currently on our website, but we can also table that list with the committee for all the projects that receive funding under the seed funding stream.
And maybe if I could just add for the honourable member, so the seed funding is actually by nomination by over 80 accelerators across the country. So what we do is we work to have a network throughout the region so that we can help be aided by people locally to put it forward. And so, in fact, there are more people nominated.
J'ai une autre question.
Apologies, I have another question. Did the projects that were approved go through the board? Was there a team that recommended them to the board, or was it done internally? Because it's not a big fund. Were all projects approved by the board?
All funded projects are approved by both. Well, they're recommended by the Project Review Committee and then subject to approval by the board before any funding is available for all of our projects. They're reviewed by internally by SDTC for eligibility on whether they meet the terms and conditions of our contribution agreement for funding, but they're also subject to an external third-party review. We have engaged partners that have expertise in perhaps the technology, finance, business, and
c'est pas ma question.
Apologies, that's not my question. My question is, were the projects approved by the board? Were all projects approved by the board?
Require board approval, yes.
Merci. Est-ce que vous avez pris toutes les précautions nécessaires?
Did you take all of the necessary precautions to ensure that there wasn't any nepotism, i.e. that family members of the board could send in their application to that seed funding? Did you take all reasonable measures to ensure that there were no conflicts of interest?
So for our seed funding program, there's all projects are subject to the same conflict of interest policy as the rest of the kind of startup and scale-up funding that we provide. So the names of the projects as well as the accelerator partners that they're working with are provided to all board members in advance of a project review committee meeting. Board members are required to make the same conflict of interest declarations, consult the registry of conflicts, and those conflicts are discussed at the meeting. And they're
Merci. Est-ce qu'à votre mémoire, il y a eu...
Thank you. Do you remember whether or not there were board members that had to recuse themselves, leave the room for certain projects to be examined for seed funding that could be linked to board family members?
So for our seed funding stream, the process for approval is there is a number of projects that are approved together in a grouping, and it's included in our consent agenda, and the consent agenda is how the approval is evidenced. And so individual members with those conflicts, they're identified in the minutes, but they are not removed from the consent agenda approval.
On va attendre avec impatience la liste des projets que vous allez...
Merci, Mr. Gould. Mr. Baines, 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my first question to Ms. Verschuren, you were trying to explain the decision made on a group of applications that you moved to, and one of the ones was the one that you were tied to. Can you just expand on that?
There were about 140 companies that were in pretty dire trouble. These are all pre-revenue companies, and so that decision, at the time the board was looking at these payments, the board sought legal advice, and because the funding was for the existing portfolio and not for individual projects, there was a declaration that the conflicts had already been declared. And so that was the legal opinion we used to make that happen.
Okay, and then you mentioned you spent time, I think it was like 2 hours with the Ethics Commissioner.
Yes?
Can you expand on like any advice you received? What was 2 hours? Is quite a long
Yes. Yeah, I'm involved in, I'm very involved in the clean tech sector across the country, and I really believe that.
No, but did you share the situation at hand, or
No,
the decision
no,
that was going to be
no,
made
no.
that you moved on? Like,
Honourable Member, this was done 18 months. This was done at the time I was 4.5 years ago when I was asked to become chair.
oh, so that
Yes.
meeting took place.
That's
before
right.
that. I thought it was
Took place
during
then.
this- okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. McConaughey. Can you explain the current role of ISED right now with what your with these alleged allegations? The Auditor General's now looking at it. What are you doing to cooperate with that?
I can speak to that in a limited sense, Mr. Chair. Certainly, the outcome of the fact-finding report was the development of a management response and action plan, which was sent to STDC, and they've agreed to implement in a timely manner so as not to impact the stakeholders. The minister has requested that that be delivered by December 31st, and my understanding is that STDC is well along the way to completing that work. The minister's also agreed to cooperate, obviously, with the investigation of the Auditor General. I'm not involved in that matter. Secondly, the minister had requested to the deputy, upon receipt of these findings, that we complete a recipient audit of the organization, but that was forestalled now due to the OAG coming in. The last piece is that the minister has decided to engage a third-party law firm to allow additional complainants to come forward with full protection to speak to any matters that may be of concern, including some of the human resources related matters that were largely out of scope of the RCGT fact-finding exercise.
Okay, so why are those areas outside the scope of?
In the conduct of the fact-finding, part of the plan that was developed in collaboration with RCGT was to identify clear and objective evidence that would be factual only. In the case of HR allegations, it's very, very difficult to do that. Generally speaking, you need to receive testimony from all parties. There's a more broad investigative process that probably would take much longer and would require additional expertise outside what RCGT could provide.
Mr. Chair, how much time?
1 minute and 4 seconds.
Okay, so
or more.
can you? I'll go to actually maybe Ms. Lawrence. Can you explain the HR practices SUT has in place?
Certainly, honourable members. So we have rigorous hiring and recruitment processes that we follow, and these have been followed throughout. And in fact,
when were they last updated?
They're updated on an every annual or 2-year basis, and we work in concert with the Human Resources Committee of the Board of Directors, and they have oversight as well into that. So in the last number of years, for example, we often do pulse surveys and employee surveys, and in fact, last in the spring, in February, March, we did a human resource survey with third party, Edelman, who went through and looked at employee wellness, health, and safety, and came back and showed us that we have a strong culture, we have a strong work environment, employees feel supported, and also made some suggestions about some things that are really common across many organizations post-pandemic. We have many people who work remotely. About half of our employees don't live in Ottawa or even Ontario, and they live in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia. And so they had some recommendations for supports for those employees, given the remote environment, given individual contributors with respect to
please.
supports, And that's one of many processes that we have in place.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Mr. Baines, worst part of this job is to cut people off, and I hate doing that, so I apologize. That concludes our second round. What I'd like to suggest, we're going to around 5:15 or so. If we can just reset, maybe get into 6-minute rounds. Sorry, what did I say? 5:15, 6:15. Sorry, yeah. But we could get into 6-minute rounds. It'll still leave us with time for 2 5-minute rounds. That'll give you a little more time, Mr. Green, Mr. Villemure aussi. Are we okay with that? Is the committee okay? Okay, let's go. We're going to start with 6 minutes. Mr. Brock, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. All right. So I'd like to ask some more questions regarding the lawyer, Mr. Vandenberg, who I understand is a partner at Osler, correct? And Mr. Vandenberg is also on the internal SDTC committee. He's a member, correct? Yes? Yes, and he was largely responsible for creating the legal opinion that your company sought after the whistleblowers made known their complaints. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes? Can I have an answer, please?
Yes.
Thank you. And it probably brings to new light, I suppose, the comments from your spokesperson, Jan Mary Bannigan, who commented to the CBC that after the investigation began, this is the investigation regarding Grant Thornton, that SDTC brought in legal counsel to conduct an internal review. She declined to say what the results of that review had been, but told CBC last month that it found nothing to substantiate the allegations. And I remark on your comments, Ms. Verscheren, that in your opening comments or in response to a question, you found the assessment, the report done by one of your own, to be very thorough, probably very objective, right? Which is very interesting because obviously the two of you, Ms. Verscheren and Ms. Lawrence, I think you really need a refresher on what conflict of interest really means. And quite frankly, Mr. Vandenberg, being a member of the Ontario Bar, certainly has responsibilities as a lawyer to understand what a conflict of interest is. Not actually an actual conflict, which this clearly is, but a perceived conflict. And in fact, he was paid for this report as well. So, to both you, Ms. Lawrence and Ms. Verscheren, how much was Mr. Vandenberg paid?
So if I could correct some assumptions there, Mr. Brock.
How much was he paid?
First of all, the Osler
Ma'am,
report,
how much was he paid?
If you would let me finish, please.
No,
I think
I'm asking
there's
the
some
question,
pertinent facts
ma'am.
here.
Mr. Brock,
You've made some
Mr. Brock
assumptions
asked
that
a
are
question, Ms. Lawrence. If
How
you
much
could
was
answer
he
his
paid?
question and then take some time afterwards.
I don't have that information. I think
Will
what's
you
important.
table the information as to how much he was paid?
We can do that, of course. Now, if I could correct some things that Mr. Brock said, Mr. Vandenberg had absolutely nothing to do with the Osler report. As per professional practices in legal situations like these, an independent counsel from Toronto was appointed, and they had no communications as per best practices of the profession. So the assertion that Mr.
So Ms. Lawrence, this is my time. Ms. Lawrence, this is my time. Ms. Lawrence, this is my time. He is a partner at that law firm. There is a conflict of interest procedure and policy in every single law firm.
Yes, and
he should have declined that because they're not the only national firm in Canada. All right, they may have a good reputation, but they're not the only firm. So I want to know how much Osler was paid for this report. I want to know specifically what time Mr. Vandenberg put into the report. And I also want to bring to your attention Section 16 of the Canada Foundation for Sustainable Development Technology Act, which prohibits members from receiving remuneration for that type of service.
Mr. Vandenberg.
So thank you for that. I'm asking questions. I'm not asking for any editorial, ma'am. I am not. This is my time.
Provide the information that
ma'am,
you
this is my time.
As we already
I
said,
have the
Mr.
floor,
Brock.
ma'am. Ms. Lawrence, I have the floor.
Mr. Brock.
I asked the question.
Mr. Brock, you have the floor. ask the questions, please. Ms. Lawrence, we're try to keep it to one person talking at a time.
Understood, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Lawrence, will you table all the emails regarding your concerns about the appointment of Ms. Verscharen as the chair of the board between yourself and the ministry officials, chief of staff, PMO, and PCO, because we have evidence that you felt there was definitely a conflict of interest on her appointment. Will you table all of those emails between yourself and the government?
I did advise the chair to contact the ethics commissioner. She did that, and of course, we can make available information.
Thank you very much. I believe that's my time, Chair.
One more minute, Mr. Brock.
Oh, I have one more
we're
minute.
We're in the 6-minute
Wonderful.
round.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, I want to get into some questions for you, Mr. McConaughey, because it appears as if you really want to substantially backtrack on the captured words and phrases and sentences and paragraphs that you used in recorded conversations. That's real evidence. When you're dealing with evidence, sometimes you have allegations, sometimes you have real evidence. This is real evidence. This is your words. And when I take a look at a number of the quotes, and I don't have all the quotes, I know we're talking about several minutes, if not hours, there's no suggestion in any of the things that you're saying to the whistleblowers that qualifies your statements. And you wanted to impress upon us here at committee that these were speculations on your part. There's nothing here to say speculation. There's very clear, definite concerns that you have that this company, SDTC, was definitely
Mr. Brock,
mismanaging.
That's the minute.
Oh,
It's a long minute.
I'm sorry, I have to keep it tight here, so that was the minute. Go ahead, Madame Fortier, pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Verschuren, I'm going to ask a question. You'll be probably very surprised, but I just need to better understand your background and how you got to be where you are today. Do you think you would be here today taking questions like this from the Conservatives if you had donated $1,675 last year to Pierre Poilievre instead of Jean Charest?
I don't know. I contribute both. I contribute to the Liberal and the Conservative parties on an equal basis. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit of how you've served through government? I
Yeah.
understand that you've served for
Yes.
a long time on different
Yes.
boards.
I'm a farmer's daughter from Cape Breton. My parents were Dutch immigrants that came to Canada because the Canadian soldiers liberated them. I'm the middle child of 5, and I went to St. FX, got my business degree, I started working on the privatization of...
If you can just link the government expertise that or appointees that you've done since.
So I've done National Science and Technology Committee for Brian Mulroney, North American Competitiveness Council for Stephen Harper. I was economic advisor during the 2008-2009 during Flaherty's response to the crisis. I worked.
So you've been chair of many boards in past governments.
I believe I have civic responsibility. It doesn't matter who the prime minister is. I contribute to our country, and I think it's extraordinarily important to do that.
Good. Merci beaucoup. J'avais besoin de vraiment comprendre combien de temps.
I needed to understand how much time or for how long you had been doing this. You have experience here and in other fields as well. Thank you. Now moving on to the contribution agreements. We didn't talk about it much today, about the procedures and the way that they are signed. Could you perhaps reassure us on your practices for contribution agreements? Are there any challenges or any changes? Have you made any changes in order to ensure that you have good agreements?
So our funding agreement with the federal government, I believe, is the contribution agreement that you're referring to. We work in conjunction with ISED anytime our funding comes up for renewal, and as Ms. Lawrence had indicated in her opening statement, that we've worked over the past probably 5 to 10 years to try to continue to evolve SDTC to meet the needs of the clean tech ecosystem. And our focus really more recently has been very much focusing on the small to medium enterprises and trying to ensure that those entrepreneurs are be able to access the same type of funding as larger organizations can access across Canadian government funding programs. And so we've continued to evolve our funding agreement with a focus on those types of activities, as well as a focus on intellectual property is one of the key ingredients for a lot of our companies. It is the biggest asset that most of them hold. So trying to include additional provisions as it relates to protection of intellectual property and the importance of that, and entrepreneurs understanding the measures that they need to take to ensure they have appropriate intellectual property strategy, and ensuring those types of costs are eligible within our funding program is very important.
Les observations que vous avez.
And for the observations that you've heard, allegations, information that you received, do you see any potential changes, or will you re-examine how you'll do things? Perhaps you can share certain updates that you would like to make to show us that there are improvements to be made?
Thank you for the question. I'll start, and Ms. Yuri can add the detail that she's excellent at. The contribution agreement evolves. Our job and our mandate is to meet the expectations of the ecosystem. This, in fact, was detailed and shown in detail in this evaluation that we got from ISED in February 2023. As I said in my opening statement, it's a draft at this point, but was about to be released. What it says in there is that we have created activities that are important to the ecosystem and necessary for the ecosystem. And so in the entire time that we work with ISED, we are always in constant dialogue about what does that look like, what does the contribution agreement say, and how should we evolve it. We do this every time we get new funding. In my tenure, I think there's been 4, 5, she would know better than me, 4 or 5 contribution agreements, and each time we try to evolve them to meet the needs of the ecosystem. The things in the RCGT report, we did detail, we disagree with some of the things they think are in contravention. And so, therefore, we've already raised that with Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. And we're having a dialogue about how those things might or may need to be changed or not. And so at this point, you know, really what we're talking about is codifying some things that we had agreement with ISED in our view. An assistant deputy minister attends every one of our board meetings. We're in continuous dialogue to make sure that we're in compliance and that we are meeting the needs of public policy that have been put forward in terms of innovation, and we expect to be able to continue to do so. We've already had, as was mentioned by Mr. McConaughey, a first meeting on management response and implementation plan. We're well on our way. We're looking forward to getting the funds going and flowing again back to entrepreneurs and the passion that we have for them.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Merci, Madame Fortier. Monsieur Villemure, 6 minutes.
Monsieur Villemure, you have 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. McConaughey, do you believe that it is sufficient to recuse oneself during a conflict of interest? Is that a best practice?
Mr. Chair, I'm not an expert on conflict of interest, but certainly from my experience within government, I believe that the appropriate practices are to disclose. I believe that's the legal threshold. And the best practice would be to document those conflicts. I think it would be additional to also document the manner in which the conflict has been managed.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you. Ms. Verschuren, during a conflict of interest that has been identified, do you believe that recusing oneself is a best practice?
Excuse me, just so I repeat the last.
Lors d'un conflit d'intérêt.
During a conflict of interest, do you believe that recusing oneself is an example of a best practice?
I think it is normal best practices today, but to add to Mr. McConaughey's point, I think the declaration needs to be managed, and it needs to be recorded.
Madame Lawrence.
Ms. Lawrence, same question, please.
Absolutely, and that is the practice that we follow. Is that the declaration is made, it's it's minuted and recusal happens. As in the report and it was stated, our minuting can be improved in certain instances on that.
Parce que j'ai toujours eu l'impression que quelqu'un qui
We get the impression that, or rather, even if somebody recuses themselves from their room, their influence can still remain in the room, correct, Ms. Lawrence?
Well, that is the practice. That is the best practice. And what I would say is that our boards of directors and our employees hold a high standard and know at what the expectation is in the Code of Ethics. And so, therefore, we expect that those conversations do not happen and that influence unduly
Voyez-vous
does
que
not
l'influence
happen.
reste dans la salle?
Do you believe that the influence stays in the room? You might not talk about it, but it can stay in the room, correct?
What I know is that our act requires that the people that are appointed to our board must have experience in the profession and in the sector. So it's difficult to have a board of directors that is completely
Je
conflict-free.
déteste poser des questions comme mes copains à côté, mais je vais vous demander.
I will ask yes or no. Does the influence stay in the room?
Yes, I guess it can, but I think that our board of directors tries to make
Merci.
sure that they hold the highest standard.
Comment qualifieriez-vous la gouvernance?
How would you qualify the current governance at ISED?
Governance at ISED, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Comment que qualifieriez-vous, évaluez
How would you qualify from 1 to 10 on the governance of SDTC?
At SDTC, I would say we use the highest best practices. I would say, it's we can always do better, obviously, so I would say it's in the top quartile.
C'est dans les meilleures pratiques considérées par vous?
Is that in best practices? In whose best practices?
In approximately every 2 years, we bring in KPMG, other of the big accounting firms, to advise us on what best practice is, and we adopt those recommendations and we move them forward. The ethics advisor is one of those recommendations that we've adopted from those reviews and moved forward.
D'accord. Comment est-ce que
How could you improve governance currently?
Yes, well, I believe yesterday there was a discussion about our act. Our act is 20 years old, and I think that the community at that time was much smaller than it is today. And today, I think that there are expectations that are different than 20 years ago. So I would encourage the committee to look at that and to propose changes to the act as they deem fit.
Madame Verschuren?
Ms. Verschuren, how would you qualify the governance at SDTC?
Votre point de vue.
Give us your opinion, please.
I think the governance is of a high standard.
Comparé à?
Compared to?
You know, I sit on a number of boards.
Oui.
Yeah, I've been on board since I was, 38 years old.
D'accord. Monsieur McConaughey, comment?
Mr. McConaughey, how would you qualify the governance at SDTC?
I don't have an opinion on the matter. I've never attended a board meeting, and I've not.
D'accord. Sans problème.
No problem. Ms. Verschuren, what is currently missing? We're here today because there was a shortcoming somewhere. It's not an accusation here, but there's a reason why we're here today. So what was missing?
The report, the RCG report basically identified that the fact-finding exercise did not reveal any clear evidence of wrongdoing or misconduct at SCTs, but it did identify areas that we could improve. Many of those areas were presented in that RCGT report, which we found, some of which were not accurate, and we tried to fix those things at the time that we received the report. And I think in your material you see our response, and so we tried to get that response into the government to respond, because we felt that some of these accusations were
Donc la gouvernance, elle est exceptionnelle.
So governance is exceptional. Raymond Chamot made mistakes, and you're responding now to their inadequate report.
We did respond.
Oui.
We did respond. We did respond and make adjustments to that to identify the areas that we felt were not accurate.
Donc on n'était pas dans l'excellence.
So you weren't in. So things weren't excellent.
So we are implementing changes to conflict of interest. You're right. They are related to better disclosure with terms of consultants, better minuting in terms of when conflicts are declared and what their nature is, and also. And as also I mentioned, the ethics commissioner, or ethics advisor, pardon me. So we are, yes, making
Thank you, Ms.
improvements
Lawrence.
that we're implementing.
See,
Yeah.
Monsieur Villemure. Mr. Green, 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm trying to better understand the situation going back to the COVID payments. You had referenced that there were 140 companies that were pre-revenue, I think was the term you used. Was EnerStore pre-revenue when it was approved for the original round of funding?
Absolutely. The project was pre-revenue, yeah, by many years, yes.
And it was pre-revenue in 2020 and then in 2020? So it had been in operations for 4 or 5 years without any revenue?
It was built over 4 or 5 years. It was a very complicated compressed air energy storage project.
And how many employees, roughly?
About 4 or 5.
4 or 5 employees?
On the project.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the funding that you received was for the 4 or 5 employees? Do you receive a salary from EnerStore?
The money goes to the equipment and the labor.
Do you receive a salary for EnerStore?
Yes.
How much do you receive for EnerStore in compensation?
I'm not sure that is something I want to say. 120,000 the last couple of years.
Every year? So out of the 200,000, 120,000 went into your compensation?
Certainly did not. It went into the project.
Which was funded by the organization that you're now the chair of? Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If I can explain
No,
how.
we don't
how
need you to
eligible
explain.
costs-
Thank you very much. I will go on to you, Ms. Lawrence. I'm going to ask you a set of questions. Do you know somebody named Aldlyn Donnelly?
Yes, I do.
And what is your relationship with Aldlyn?
She's a person that I've known in the ecosystem for about 20 years.
Would you consider them a friend?
I would.
Were you aware of her role in Alice Ecosystem Project?
I was, and I declared it to the project review committee at the time that the Alice project came forward.
Did you recuse yourself in any conversations regarding the project?
I discussed it with the board, the project review committee. They determined that because the person was a subcontractor and because I have no voting role on the project review committee, that I could stay in the room for the conversation.
Did you involve yourself in the conversation?
Not that I recall.
You don't recall?
I don't usually, actually, the reason I say that is I don't usually engage.
So what would be the purpose of you being there if you're not going to engage?
I'm there to support my team as they present projects to the committee.
So you're supporting your team as they present a project
That's
for
correct.
somebody that you've known for 20 years
As I
to the
said, I
board.
disclosed that to the project review committee. They reviewed it.
but yet
and
just
I followed
recently
the conflict
you-
of interest practice.
Just recently, though, you testified that you believed recusal was a good best practice, and yet you didn't do it.
In this situation, there was deemed not to be a conflict that was of a material nature by the directors who are my bosses, and so I stayed in the room.
So it's the directors who decide who is in a conflict of interest?
What they do and what we do in our process, and Ms. Yuri can provide more information if you'd like, is a declaration is made, and then, yes, the directors evaluate that declaration, perceived in this case, and make a decision on who should continue to participate in the
A declaration is not a reverse Uno.
I'm sorry?
A declaration is not a reverse Uno that you could put on the table and say, I declare it, therefore it doesn't exist.
I
This
did
was a
not-
friend of yours. And again,
And that is why I
referencing
declared it, sir.
referencing your own organization's code of conduct, it goes into very clear descriptions
And that's
about
why I declared it,
relationships.
sir.
But you still didn't recuse yourself. And
I
so,
declared it, and I followed our process. And
but you've
that's-
now, I think, acknowledged that your process had some significant gaps. I'm going to put this question to both you and Ms. Verschuren, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it. My Dutch is not so great. You're here, right? You're at a parliamentary ethics committee. To get to this point, there has got to be some significant gaps in governance. Would you not agree?
I think that you have a series of allegations that have been shown in 2 reports to be non-substantiated. I think there are some administrative findings that have been put forward and that we're implementing them.
So how do you think you got
I can always do
here?
better. We can always do better, and that's how we're
How do you
approaching
think,
the situation.
maybe I'll ask this to Ms., how do you think you got here? I'm putting the question directly to you. How did you get here? What mistakes happened? Is this a witch hunt from somebody else? Is this an axe to grind? I'm giving you the opportunity to share with, for the good and welfare of the committee, how your organization got into this position, which is the last position an organization like yours wants to get in. You're the chair. Ultimately, you are the corporate governance and responsible for the organization. So in your opinion, how did you get here?
The 345-page submission started with the Auditor General. And so that is something we don't have access to, but we have had two separate independent studies that showed that there was no wrongdoing and no misconduct, but that there were areas that we need to improve, which we're doing now. That's how we got here.
Given the nature of the testimony today, I'm going to put it to you one more time. Do you regret not recusing yourself?
We took the approach of listening to what our legal advisor told us. And there were 140 companies involved in this.
Do you feel like you got good advice in retrospect?
I took the advice from our lawyer.
And I'm giving you the opportunity to have retrospect. Now you're here. Your salary's been disclosed. The funding that your organization was it's a pre-revenue company for 4 or 5 years, funded by an organization that you're chairing, and you're receiving compensation. Do you not regret recusing yourself? You could say no if you don't.
I think I took the advice, I received the advice from legal advice, and I think that was the proper approach.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you, Mr. Verchuren. Final 2 5-minute rounds, 1 Conservative, 1 Liberal. Mr. Barrett for 5, go ahead.
Very quickly, Ms. Lawrence, how many projects have been funded by SDTC since 2015?
I think we'll have to get that number for you.
Okay, well,
sir.
because of all the projects that have been funded, only 21 were sampled by RCGT in their preliminary review, and nearly $40 million in suspicious payments were found. In my first exchange with you, Mr. McConaughey, you said that the first time you saw the report from RCGT was in September, but when I jogged your memory with a quote from you, recordings of you, you agreed that you first saw the findings in May. You then said that although you asserted in the recordings that we've heard that on June 7th the minister would be briefed on RCGT by the DM, that you don't know if that happened, but the minister said that he got the brief in September. I asked if you believed the whistleblowers, but what you said in May was, quote, "We said to the whistleblowers, we said we would believe you. Now there's enough evidence to say we really do believe you. That means the government is going to have to take action," close quote. The fund's still open. No one's been fired. Yes or no, sir? Was ISED of the mind at that time to clear house at SDTC? Yes or no, please?
No, they were not. That was my personal opinion.
This was a big deal to ISED. You called it a, quote, sponsorship level giveaway, close quote. Is that correct, sir? Yes or no, please?
It was an offhand remark, sir.
When discussing next steps on the findings, was there ever a point when you thought the issues at SDTC were so numerous that you would need to open a new office to deal with this issue? Yes or no, sir?
I discussed the matter with the Deputy Minister.
Thank you. That's a yes. I want to offer you a quote. You said, like, you don't want a David Johnston special rapporteur or something where people are like, oh, it's another member of the liberal elite who's sweeping this under the rug, close quote. Quote, so we're thinking of setting up an office that would be like a new deputy minister, like reporting to the deputy or report to me. We'll see. It depends, I guess, on how the minister wants to run things, close quote. So this is the story. In May, when ISED got the report findings, you were gung-ho, you were ready to fire the board, ready to fire everybody, and then open a new office, a director general and a team, and have a spokesperson, but you just didn't want it to be someone who was the Prime Minister's neighbor or a member of the Trudeau Foundation. You even called it a sponsorship-level giveaway. Then in June, after the minister was briefed, the direction and attitude completely changed. You said, quote, we'll be just amending our current contract to continue the scope of study. What a climb down. I find this incredible, sir. What did the minister say? The question is, what did the minister say in June to halt the plan that you laid out?
I had no communication with the minister throughout this exercise. It's the deputy minister's role to do this, And if I may,
I've heard your response. I don't find it credible based on the recordings that we have from you at the time. I'd like to recap a few things that have been uncovered as well. The chair of the board got $220,000 for her company, and then her salary from that company was $120,000. But this is not perceived by the chair or by SDTC to be a conflict. The president got $200,000 from a meeting for her best friend. This is unbelievable. Ms. Lawrence, can you tell the committee how much in bonuses you have received from SDTC since you've started working there?
My salary is a matter of public record. It's in our annual report, and it's
Bonuses,
approved by the
please,
board
ma'am.
of directors. I don't have that information. We'd have to provide it. But
You'll provide it in writing to the committee?
It's a matter of public record. It's in our annual reports.
How many versions of the RCGT report are there, Mr. McConaughey?
It's detailed in the report itself. There's a version control page. I believe it's 4 versions.
And did ISED ask for any parts of it to be removed?
No.
I have to say, it's an incredible story to hear your words today when placed against your words as this has been unfolding. I have about 35 seconds left. I'd like Mr. Brock to take it, please.
Ms. Lawrence, Mr. McConaughey is on record saying that ISED confronted you, and you admitted that when Osler did their investigation, it was raised to their attention that they weren't religiously documenting conflict of interest. You went and did the retroactive documentary, documented retroactive declarations that she should have made at the time. She didn't disavow it or anything. The grant report also confirms that this was done on the advice of the corporation's external legal counsel. This is criminality. This is fraud. This is forgery on the Canadian taxpayer. This warrants a police investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Brock.
This is staggering.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. I'm going to give you less than a minute, Ms. Lawrence, to respond to that, and then we're going to go over here. Go ahead, please. Quickly, just quickly.
Yes, this is factually untrue. This is an error in the report, and it has been noted in the materials that were given to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Dama, 5 minutes to complete. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to go back to some of the questions Mr. Green was asking earlier of you, Ms. Verchuren. He was very specific in the first round of questions about you recusing yourself, and your responses to him were that all of this happened prior to you being on the board. And you went through an elaborate process that you followed prior to joining the board, a 2-hour interview with the ethics commissioner. And to Ms. Forche, you went through a long list of your resume on the number of boards you've sat on. So you obviously have a lot of experience. When this one thing came to the board, and you keep referring to legal advice that you got, it's obvious by your answers and your experience that you must have had common sense. To me, would dictate that you would question the legal advice and out of purely best practice recuse yourself from that, whether you got the legal advice or not. Given your decades of experience, I'm just wondering why you wouldn't have trusted your own instincts on this, given the experience that you've had.
At the time, the board decision on the COVID, the board, they did seek legal advice, and because there were 140 or more of these projects, it was considered an operational issue. Everybody was treated the same. Everyone got the same amount of money, and therefore, we received that legal opinion that demonstrated this, and therefore it wasn't necessary to declare all the conflicts again.
You said
because
that before,
they were
though?
already declared. Those conflicts were already declared.
I know. I don't understand, given your experience and your extreme lengths you went to before you joined the board to ensure that there was no conflict. This is just my opinion, but why you wouldn't have said, you know what, out of an abundance of caution, I should probably walk out of the room and recuse myself on this one. So we'll leave it at that. Ms. Lawrence, in response to one of the questions, you said that you have highest and best practices with the board, and yet the the report highlighted a number of things that were, you've acknowledged, things that you need to improve. Granted, things change over 20 years, but things like a formal mechanism or process for recording, reporting, and acting on employee complaints and whistleblowing, just from some of your testimony today, even some of the recording of minutes at the meeting seems to be somewhat lacking. Why wasn't this addressed before by the board over the years?
I think there's two parts there. So I completely accept that the minuting needs to be improved. We're working on that. We do have formal processes for when an employee raises concerns. In fact, I can give you two examples when they were used in recent times. In the first example, about 3 years ago, an employee raised a concern about a leader. We brought in a third party to review the situation as is required by our policy in that instance. And then the second, of course, you've heard about today, when there was a complaint that went to a board member, a special committee was struck, and the investigation was launched. So we do have those policies and procedures. We do follow them. And in these instances, they were followed, and that's the situation.
But I guess some of the things that came out in the report talking about governance, in a 20-year-old board, why did it take this report to have you start reviewing these things? And why did, going back to, the ethics advisor, again, a full year from when you said it was really important until it actually happened. And it just, as a matter of course, I would think you would be reviewing these policies. And minuting is something that should not be, you shouldn't require a report to show those glaring deficiencies.
Point taken, honourable member. We do governance reviews every 3 years. Those are implemented. I take your point that perhaps we could have acted more quickly on, for example, the ethics advisor.
Okay. Chair, I only have 30 seconds left, so I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay. Well, you have 50, but that's fine.
Oh, do I?
Yeah. Go. If you pause
You're
a
more
little longer,
generous
you're
with
only
your
going to have
time.
30, but
No,
go ahead.
No, that's fine, Mr. Brock. You don't need to take my time.
Give it to Larry. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Pam. You got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I don't have time to ask a question and get a
okay.
response, but I'm not prepared to cede it to the other parties.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Damoff. Okay, go ahead.
There's been a request for a number of documents.
I was just going to address that,
Yes.
Mr. Brock, and the clerk has been taking note of a timestamp of every request that's been made.
Okay.
So I was going to tell the witnesses that you will be receiving a follow-up email from the clerk on the documents that have been requested today. I'm going to ask that you return those documents 1 week from today, Wednesday, November 15th. I think that's fair and reasonable, at 5 p.m. Okay? So, and Mr. Brock, I still see your hand. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify the request that I had made of Ms. Lawrence. She talked over me before I had a chance to fully explain what I wanted.
Okay, go ahead.
I want emails between herself and ISED ministry, the minister himself, the chief of staff, any other political operatives in the ministry, PMO, PCO, regarding her concerns regarding the appointment of Ms. Verschaeren as the board chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brock.
Thank
That
you.
provides clarification for the clerk as well, so I appreciate that. I'm going to dismiss the witnesses, but before I do, I want to thank all of you for making yourself available today. Mr. McConaughey, Ms. Verschuren, Ms. Lawrence, and Ms. Uri, thank you, and I'll dismiss you. We still have some business to deal with. That is the subcommittee business. The subcommittee met on Monday to determine a course of action for the committee. I believe all members have received the plan as what came out of the subcommittee. Any discussions on that? No? Seeing none? Okay. Sorry, what was that, Matt?
This is just an observation, John. It's nothing personal. I'm unclear why that was split up. My direction prior to leaving was very clear, and I'm unclear about the advantage of having them split up. And I would just say, like, when we're creating this work plan, we're going to do it in good faith, and we're going to hope that we can kind of stick to a work plan and not have kind of any, veto-type decisions to deviate from it without having a discussion of the committee.
Yeah. Okay, and I appreciate that, Matt. Just another thing with respect to the subcommittee report, you'll notice in there that it's left that there may be some changes in that week of the 20th. We discussed that at subcommittee as well. So there may be one alteration to that date as discussed in the subcommittee. So go ahead, Pam.
I was going to ask about that, so I just had a question on that, Chair. Does that mean that if we lose one meeting on the 20th or the 24th, does that mean that an additional meeting would be added for the social media study, or is it just lost? It wasn't clear from the report.
Yeah, so I think if I'm interpreting the discussion the other day is that if it is lost, that we would pick it up at another time. Okay, so we made it clear that there were going to be 4 meetings left on the social media study, and that is my intention, unless I'm missing something, Madam Clerk. No? Okay.
So I guess I would just request that if we make it up, it be done immediately after the other ones, so that we can just get this done.
Yep.
Okay,
Could be the week of the 27th, for example.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
okay.
Did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Mr. Barrett, go ahead. Monsieur Villemure après.
So while we're considering we're still considering the subcommittee report, Chair?
Yep, we are.
So reflecting on the urgency that's been expressed for meetings on the social media study, I just wanted to see if you could canvass the room, Chair, for unanimous consent to have meetings on witness hearings on the social media study next week. It could be 2 3-hour meetings. It could be 3 2-hour meetings. But I just wanted to put that forward. There's resources available. There's been an urgency expressed, and it doesn't conflict with any of the other directions.
So I don't have to canvass the room. I can see some heads shaking, and I appreciate, Mr. Barrett, that you want to put some urgency to this study, but I don't think we have consent for that. So thank you. Madame Fortier, go ahead, please.
C'est Monsieur Villemure qui est le prochain.
Monsieur Villemure is next. Monsieur Villemure, apologies. I was wondering if we were going to have a discussion on the subcommittee report that was sent out today. Yes, we're having the discussion now. I missed that. Apologies. Do you have anything to say? I'll listen for now.
Fortier?
Premièrement,
Firstly, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want all members to understand what I shared during the subcommittee meeting, the importance of moving forward with the social media study. We talked about 4 meetings. I think that it was quite clear when I shared this at the subcommittee meeting, but I wanted to be sure that all members know that this study is a priority, and I hope that we will focus our efforts for the next 4 meetings, the 20, 22nd, 27th, and 29th, I believe. It would be good if we could focus on the social media study. We talked about the potential whistleblower that might want to come to the committee, but we haven't received anything yet. So hopefully the social media study would be a priority in that case.
Madame Fortier, again, like the discussion we had, if the intent is to have, or if it does occur that we are going to have that one meeting, we've got very specific direction from the subcommittee when that meeting would occur, what week it would occur, and it would only involve one meeting. We're still in the process of determining whether that meeting will in fact happen, but I'll certainly advise committee members well in advance through the clerk what the status of that meeting is as we come back. So, merci. Monsieur Villemure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like Madame Fortier, I understand the constraints for the whistleblower, but it's not time sensitive, whereas the study on social media was asked for by Ms. Khalid a long time ago. It's very important, and I think that we need to maintain the dates that we had reserved for it. Thank you, Mr. Villemure.
The whistleblower, if that doesn't work out, then 20, 22, 27, 29 will be the TikTok study. OK? Good. Est-ce que nous sommes en accord avec...
Do we agree with the subcommittee report? Yes. We all agree.
Madam Clerk, let the record reflect that. I don't have any other business. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful day.